Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Concert Honesty Podcast. This is June 26th, 2026, episode number 253 with my guest, Bill Cahn. Bill was a founding member, still is a founding member of the Nexus Percussion Ensemble based out of Canada. If you grew up playing percussion in any institution, you sort of always knew about Nexus, and their influence loomed large, but in the most positive and generous way. So I talk with Bill about a wide-ranging sort of set of topics, including his time with Nexus, his love of sound curation that emanated from his orchestra playing, and also the history of the percussion education system in the United States post-World War II. It's a fascinating history, and Bill gives a lot of great context. We talk about aging and just things you're insecure about or not insecure about anymore as you get older. It's a lovely conversation. I hope you enjoy it. Ladies and gentlemen, Bill Cahn.
All right. How you doing, man?
I'm good. What's new?
What's new? Well, funny you should ask. Got a new book that just arrived, the first copy of which just arrived yesterday.
Okay.
So it hasn't been publicized yet, hasn't been distributed yet.
All right.
You're the first one to have the pleasure of announcing its arrival.
Is it called popular music?
No, it's not.
Even more unpopular music?
But I don't know anything about popular music. I only know about unpopular music. But no, the title of the book, I'll be happy to show it to you, is Concepts of Sound,
Okay.
Percussion Instruments in Western Classical Music.
Amazing.
It's a 419-page book looking at all of the standard orchestral instruments, giving their history and talking about their sounds. Now, where did that come from? Well, I looked at all of when I was doing the planning for this book, I looked at all of the books that I studied from when I was in college. So Goldenberg, for keyboards, and Gardner book, and all of those traditional books.
Yeah.
And while all of them have lots to say about technique, they have virtually zilch to say about sound, which I found really fascinating. And was the first time I came to the awareness that none of those books really talked about sound at all. And sound is, having played in an orchestra now, not recently, but for 30 years playing in an orchestra, sound became very important. You had to blend, you had to find the right sound, especially with cymbals. And there's a lot to know about the sound of cymbals that is very rarely discussed anywhere, especially in printed materials. So this book deals with those issues.
Amazing.
And it was really fun to write. It took me almost all of 2025 to get it into a shape that I'm comfortable with.
Well,
it's not a how-to book. It's not a you have to do this kind of thing this way, it's the only way to do it book. It's rather, here's how sound works. Use it as you will. Use the information as you will. Make that a part of your thinking.
Well,
whatever sounds you hear.
That sounds really fascinating. I can't wait to read it, and I'm glad to sort of officially announce it to the world on this podcast.
So let me show it to you, Josh, and then we'll get into whatever you had in mind.
Yeah. Okay. Absolutely.
So I'm going to hold it up to the.
There you go.
There Amazing. We go.
Beautiful. I can barely read a book, Bill. I can't imagine writing one.
Well, it's going to exist as an ebook as well. In fact, I don't want to print copies of the book. It's too expensive now, and it's expensive to print, and it's expensive to send them. So it'll be published as an ebook.
Can I do the audio reading of it?
I'm sorry, I don't know if there'll be any audio. That's a possibility.
No, can I read the book out loud and have people, so if they want to listen to the book, like an audio book?
Absolutely. Yeah, and you will get a copy after this interview.
Okay.
I'll send you the copy of the book.
All right. Well, then I'll sit down and put on a microphone and just read the whole thing in my own voice. And so,
400 and some pages, it's going to take you a whole day.
I got nothing but time, Bill. I can make that happen. Well, it's a pleasure to see you, and let's officially gavel this to order. I just had a conversation with one of your cohorts in Nexus, Russ Hartenberger, and I've been rebooting my podcast after I think a couple years off. I did 251 interviews prior and during the pandemic, and then I did 54, I think, interviews for the Drumming at 50 website that Russ had sort of organized. And for a million reasons that aren't really important to go into today, I sort of just took a break. Life was kind of crazy, and I was questioning why I was talking to people. Like, what was it? Why was I doing it? And I wanted to reboot it because I'm actually really curious, and I hope you're not insulted by this, but like people I admire, but also people who are of a certain age and of a certain wisdom. And so, if you don't mind me asking, how old are you, Bill?
Well, I'm in my 80th year. I'm 79 years old, and I'll be 80 in November.
Yeah, and the thing I've learned both in just talking with folks like you and Russ and Gary and everybody, Steve Reich and whatever is, and also playing with you, is that there's a wisdom to your playing and your approach to things that no matter how hard I try at 47, um, I can see it out there, but I just can't reach it. I can see the dial, but my arms don't reach to turn it. And so I kind of want to just pick your brain a little bit. And I do have your other book, Unpopular Music, and I've been reading it in sort of the John Cagean sense, where I just randomly open up a page and start reading whatever story you're telling.
It's
Um,
intended to be that way.
but I kind of want to start, if it's okay with you. I want to get to the couple of the stories in the book that just had me doubled over laughing, because I was like, oh man, so has almost the identical story, and it's reassuring to know that the trailblazers before us were doing the same things. But can you just take me back? You said you're almost 80 years old, but I was a student at the University of Akron when I first saw the Pearl poster of Nexus, and all of you sitting there. And I think the thing that they don't tell you in those posters is like, hey, all of these guys were 10 years old at some point, or they were 22 in school, and they were goofing around at 3 in the morning at Eastman School of Music in a room that they were hiding from the janitors because they were trying to they wanted to lock the building, whatever. So before you get even to Eastman, can you tell me, like, what was 10-year-old Bill Cahn like? What were you doing at 10 years old?
Well, I was in elementary school, and I had actually already played in the school orchestra, and I was lucky to live at a time and in a community that valued music and particularly orchestral music. It was city of Philadelphia.
Mhm.
And at 10 years old, I was taking snare drum lessons from a trombone teacher who was routinely traveling between schools. He was at my elementary school once a week, and I and other students were taking snare drum lessons, not on drums, talk about sound, but on wooden practice pads.
Yeah.
And we would play to accompany songs in the daily assemblies when we would the entire assembly from I would say from 3rd grade to 6th grade, the older assembly kids in elementary school, there were 2 assemblies, one for the younger, one for the older. We would sing songs, patriotic songs and historic songs and children's songs, and the drummers, of which I was one, who were not learning at first to read music. We would take our drum pads, line up across the stage and play drum rhythms that were learned, by rote, and just
Mhm.
play them to accompany the songs that we were singing. So
Mm.
that's what I was doing at 10 years old.
And what year would this have been? I'm terrible at backwards math. What year would this have roughly
So
been?
I was born in 1946, so this would have been 1956.
So one of the things I'm very that I always I'm very interested in historical context. I'm not a historian, but I'm fascinated. I grew up with the rudiments, the was it 25 rudiments or whatever. There was a page that was printed out and handed to me like, this is your Bible for day one. We're going to learn these. But those are derivative from military drumming, and when you say you were born in 1946, that was a year after World War II ended. And I think a lot of people don't realize that a lot of the educate. Can you just tell me a little bit about like the birth of the percussion education system in the United States as an outgrowth of the end of World War II? And maybe I'm wrong here, but that's been my spidey sense the whole time.
Well, World War II was really significant. The rest of the world, Europe, all the industrial countries in the world, really, Europe and Asia,
Hmm.
were devastated by the war,
Yeah.
and the United States basically came through without a scratch. So at the end of World War II, United States was tremendously wealthy
Mm,
and basically had access to all of the materials in the world and had all of the significant infrastructure to prosper. And we were the beneficiaries of that. We boomers.
hmm.
Uh, this was given to us. It was a gift that we were born at a time
Hmm.
when our country was tremendously wealthy and had tremendous influence throughout the world. And that wealth and influence was used in education in the 1950s, which expanded humongously, especially music. So in Philadelphia, we had Philadelphia Orchestra musicians coming into the schools to do concerts.
Mm,
We were having private lessons, as I said earlier, once a week, no cost. There, we had a school orchestra
hmm.
in elementary school. That's very rare to find today.
Yeah.
We had radio programs, and for the younger kids to play along with the music that was presented on daily radio programs. There was a flood of resources
Mm,
for the music world and for other worlds too. For example, the mathematics world and the technical world. All of the resources were here. So we were tremendously lucky to have been born at a time, my generation was at least, when all of those things were there. Of course, now the rest of the world has recuperated some 80 years after
hmm.
the
Hmm.
Second World War. And the rest of the world is benefiting to that effect with becoming more prosperous, in
It's one of
spite of the fact that that's not to say there's no problems out there and there's no
sure.
poverty out there, but the world is much more prosperous now than it was in the 1950s.
It's fascinating to. I was just in Berlin. If not, I think it was last year, about a year and a half ago, doing a thing with Caroline Shaw. And one of the things that when you watch old historical videos of Berlin, and then you go there now and you realize like that whole place was decimated. And so all of the buildings you're looking at in Berlin, also Dresden, like were are modern buildings. And the only attack on the US, if I'm is Pearl Harbor. And that was in Hawaii. And so when you say there was no scratch, it's like Pearl Harbor was a huge scratch, but that's what got us into the war. And then we built factories and everything, the whole economy turned into supporting the war. Um, after like was all the art support in Philadelphia, was it local, was it a local government thing, or was it a national sort of the federal government was like flooding the states with money for these very things?
Very Oh, no, it was very local. The federal s there was the National Foundation for the Arts didn't exist.
Hmm.
None of the government,
Mm-hmm.
agencies that support the arts or humanities existed. They were created by the, boomer generation
Hmm.
using the prosperity of resources that were available, to fund it. So,
It's
we're
interesting.
now
I don't think I had necessarily clocked that that was a progression of like because of the resources you all had, you saw that you learned the importance of arts funding, of math, and sort of just education in general as being a sort of shared space that we as citizens of this country sort of need to prop up purposefully. You know, it's not going to exist on its own.
yeah. Yeah. So, well, it wasn't always so. Nothing that exists today was always so. It
Mm,
all happened at a certain time due to certain circumstances of the environment and the luck.
mm.
And, that's one of the things that you learn as a person my age because you've seen this happen several times.
Hmm.
Most recently with AI, but before that with the computer. I remember my first computer was a Mac 156K, and when Ruth, my wife, suggested that we get a computer, I said, "What the heck are we ever gonna do with a computer? What's it useful for? What we can do anything we wanna do without it." Now, today in 2026, all I do is spend my life on the computer.
Yeah.
No matter what I want to do, the computer is the vehicle to enable it to happen, whether it's paying bills or whether it's auditing a concert or talking to my friends halfway around the world. And it wasn't always so. So, and when I was born into a world without television. It was a radio world. It was a very oral world. I remember spending my childhood listening to the radio in the mornings before school and after school. And the TV was something entirely new. Actually, seeing people behaving in certain ways and not hearing it, having to imagine it. It's a whole other world. I
Yeah.
mean, it's like going to Mars. It's like
Well,
Star Trek.
one of the
You
things that
know,
I'm always, yeah, I mean, it's an interesting critique of, I think, younger generations, and mine included, that when something happens, we feel like it's the first time it's ever happened, and it's our idea to have identified that. And when you think, like, when you get tricked on social media these days, and it's, or because of an AI fake or something, and you're just like, well, this is a new thing. It's like, well, no. Do you remember War of the Worlds? Like, people genuinely
right?
like, they were just like, went out of their houses like, bro, there are aliens in New Jersey, and we have got to stop this, and it's like, no, it was just it was a radio play. And
But the world didn't know. The
right,
technology didn't enable the world to have access to news and information the way it does now.
right,
I mean, um, with the Rochester Philharmonic, I did a history of the Philharmonic. The first conductor we had was British.
hmm,
Back in 1922, the first orchestra conductor. I'll think of his name in a minute because one of the things that happens when you get old is your memory. You got to push the button and wait for the uh, for the data to arrive. But the first conductor we had got on a train in London to take him to the airport. That I think to the airport, to the seaport. He got on a boat for a week and a half, got to New York, and took a train to get to Rochester. All of that took about 8 to 10 days. The last conductor I had when I retired from the Philharmonic was able to have breakfast in England, get on a plane, and have lunch in Rochester.
yeah.
So those are the kinds of changes that you can only see and experience
Well,
and have firsthand knowledge of through experience.
yeah, and
You can't talk about it.
the poor operations director of the orchestra with that first conductor who had to get on a boat wasn't able to text them and be like, hey, did you get on the boat okay? They were just like, hope we see you in 2 weeks. you know
Well, same with messaging.
yeah,
Uh, yeah, before that was before radio. So you got on a boat. The boat was isolated on the ocean until it got to New York or to a port. So having some sense of where you are only happens when you've had a lot of experience, and that's part of aging too, and that's part of the wisdom you're talking about. It doesn't always occur to people who
hmm.
don't have the experiences, the the good luck to have had experiences that highlight those things.
Well, there's ageism is a thing that everybody feels totally okay to sort of engage in, and I've always sort of, it's like, yeah, there are some old people that I don't trust with to walk my dog, but there's a lot of old people I know who would be rad to, put in positions of power or whatever. Like, don't paint with such a broad brush, you know.
Yeah, well, Mark Twain said it all, man. He said, history repeats itself. It doesn't match, but it rhymes.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Well, okay, let's go back to 10-year-old Bill. You're playing a drum, which
Yeah.
also I love that, like, for some reason, and this was the similar case to me, is like everybody else, like beginning trumpet players got to go like, "Wah," and they got to honk on a clarinet and sound like a goose for 4 months before you made a sound. Drummers were like, yeah, we're just going to give you a thing that is never going to make a sound and hope that you develop a sound. And I'm curious, as you were sort of studying, like, who was the first person you like genuinely studied with at a young age?
Well, again, we had resources. The Philadelphia school district hired a percussion teacher
Hmm.
who traveled from school to school. This didn't happen until I was in high school.
Okay.
His name was Joseph Hutland. He was a local drummer. He's from a family of drummers dating back for generations. And he was inspiring. And he introduced me to the Bauer book, the Imperial Method. I don't know if you know that,
I
but it was a
don't.
very, very influential book by Harry A. Bauer. I talk about it in my new book. In fact, I use that as a basis
Okay.
because he was a Boston percussionist freelancing and also playing with a symphony on occasion.
Okay. I'm writing that
Harry
down.
H. Bower, Bower,
Okay.
and Imperial Method, and he had several other books, none of which I read his text.
Mhm.
But when I finally read his text as an adult last year, I realized that there was no discussion of sound. It was all about playing rhythms
Mm.
properly
Mhm.
and technically. So these were technical concerns, and I find that to be very prevalent with method books and tutors and instruction books throughout history.
Mhm.
They talked about, for percussionists anyway, they talked about drums. And furthermore, composers, when you get a snare drum part, they don't tell you what kind of drum to play. They don't tell you if you want a high snare or a medium snare or a field
Right.
drum or any other kind of snare drum. You decide what to play, and everybody had their own choice about what to use, and that's great. Today, when you learn snare drum, we rarely talk about the sound at all. And each player is free to determine what sound they want to use, and that's great. And there's no attempt to try to change that.
Mhm.
It's just a matter of making you aware of that,
Right,
that you're
right.
choosing to use a sound and you're not choosing to use other sounds. And in the context of getting into the music, any sound might have a home. That if you are concerned about sound, you can find a place for it, and that gives you a voice,
Mm.
and it expands your voice. So it's not to take a particular voice, it's rather to expand the options that you have available to you as a player.
Yeah, I mean, I've I've thought a lot when you sort of scan the history of percussion playing, but in my niche, in our niche, like well, I guess I would say, yeah, our percussion ensemble niche. There are many groups, Nexus, Percussion Group Cincinnati, Amadinda, Percussion to Strasbourg, a lot of folks that came before us and are still doing things, to be clear, um, who have really cared about the type of sound or the quality of their instrument that they're playing. And when I think about it's not that we don't care. It's just that for some reason, our touring life, we never have control over the back line. So when I show up, there's a quick and dirty way to make every drum basically work. And it's not that I don't care about the sound, but the attention to detail. And I'm curious if you think that my lack of orchestra playing and really having to think about that, like, I have like 17 different triangles because every Mahler piece compared to Beethoven or whoever calls for a different vibe. I'm curious just your thoughts on that.
Well, I discussed that in my book, Concepts of Sound. Every triangle has a definite pitch.
Mhm.
Every symbol has a definite pitch.
Mhm.
We don't take advantage of that. In my last few years in the orchestra, I started taking advantage of that. Every woodblock has a definite pitch.
Mhm.
I started using that way of thinking about sound. And what I noticed was that people in the orchestra would say, "Hey, that really sounds great." They didn't know why.
Mm.
They didn't know what was being used, but it makes a difference. For example, do you know the Adams piece, "Short Ride in a
Yep, that's a
Fast"?
big solid wood block ripping the whole time.
Two wood blocks from beginning to end.
Uh-huh.
The pitch of the wood block makes a difference.
Yeah, yeah.
If you can find a pitch that relates to the ensemble, and this is what you get in orchestral playing that's not being taught much anymore.
Mhm.
It's about blending, using your sound to blend into the sound of the ensemble, which is the most important thing. It's not your sound, it's the ensemble sound that's important. That way of thinking is disappearing from pedagogy altogether
Mm.
because no matter what instrument you have, I'm not talking about percussion only,
Mhm.
but what I've seen going to music schools, going to orchestras, is that the concerns today for each of the instruments are that you have a good solo sound. It's
Mhm.
not about your blended sound into the orchestra, and that is disappearing. The Cleveland Orchestra still has a European sound, but most American orchestras sound the same.
Mm.
They sound identical. You can't listen to it and be able to identify most orchestras because they all have this blended sound that's sort of more everywhere.
Well, the
And
the
that's worldwide too. That process is happening worldwide, but slower in Europe than
yeah.
in the US.
Well, I'm curious too. I mean, so, I was heavily into. I only took one orchestra audition my entire life, and the process of getting into an orchestra just frankly terrified me.
Ridiculous.
But I love playing in an orchestra, and so has gotten to do a couple concertos. We play Les Nos. One of my favorite live performances ever as a student was Mahler 2 at Yale. Like, I'm
Yeah,
sorry, playing the
that's
bass drum
great.
part when that organ comes in is just like better than anything a human could do.
It's cosmic, man.
But I'm curious from your vantage point, like in my mind, folks like Alan Abel, Vic Firth, uh, were people who were kind of like the first red flag of like, hey, you should care about this. The hall you're playing in affects the way you need to play. So Alan Abel, maybe they're playing in a dry hall, so he's got 8 castanets for that one excerpt or whatever because he's got to project. From your vantage point, who was the first people that you saw? Because I don't want to assume that percussionists, oftentimes the percussionists in orchestras weren't even percussionists. They were like, hey, can you do this thing? You know, go back there and bang. I mean, imagine the first guy that got handed Porgy and Bess, the very first rehearsal. He's probably like, are you kidding me, George?
Probably George Hamilton Green, believe it or not,
Oh,
because
is
he
that right? Okay,
played.
well, then never mind. He was like, this is easy. But
Well,
I'm
it
curious from your
wasn't for him.
vantage
I'm
point,
sure it wasn't easy, but he got it.
what was your, who were the people that you saw as a student really caring about that type of sound?
Well, we had free tickets to Philadelphia Orchestra concerts, and they were coming, and those were our guides. And not only that, but we had an all Philadelphia orchestra, high school orchestra, and senior high school orchestra, and it was the students who were working with Philadelphia Orchestra percussionists who were winning the auditions to play in those student orchestras.
Mm,
So Mr. Hutland, my first teacher, enabled me to join the Philadelphia Middle School, all Philadelphia Middle School Orchestra, and there I met Bill Hinger and his
mhm,
father,
mhm,
Dan Hinger, and I was able to take due due to a very weird circumstance, which I talk about. I've talked about several interviews. I don't want to take the time to do that now, but I met with Mr. Hanger and he offered me a lesson. And for the next 4 years, that happened every other week or so. I would have a free lesson with Dan Hanger. And as a part of that, I would also get tickets and free access to rehearsals of the Philadelphia Orchestra and concerts. And to get, and in those days, the Hinger, Abel, Michael Bookspan, and Charles Owen, the principal percussionist,
mhm,
would leave the stage after the concert. They go to a back door at the Academy of Music, and they would leave. And there, all of the students who attended the concert would be waiting, and they would have a chat. And the
mm,
students would ask him, "Well, what were you thinking when you did this? That was great. That was fantastic. What did you do?" And they would talk about it, and we'd be Google glide over the whole thing and discussing what we loved, and get into it that way. So there was a personal connection to the players as well as,
mm,
being blown away by incredible music, well played and cared about
yeah,
and given thoughtful, interpretations and so forth, as deep as you can go. So we were blessed to have that experience. And, today, to get an orchestral teacher to teach beginners, for example, it just doesn't happen.
yeah.
Most of them are teaching at the, college or conservatory level.
Yeah, and by that time, the cake is already baked for the most
Uh,
part, like, and you're just trying to
absolutely.
make sure that the icing is good, you know?
Absolutely.
And I don't mean that in an insulting way, but it just as somebody who has now taught a fair amount of students, you're sort of like, "Okay, I can't unring that bell, but I can give you a different bell to ring. And so let's see if we can make this somewhat better." But I thought, man, if I just had you when you were in 5th grade, this would have been this would this would be so much easier.
Well, that's absolutely true. So
Well,
so, I guess I answer is still again, it's circumstance.
yeah.
That was one of the resources that we were fortunate enough to have access to. Um, prior, well, similarly, I would go to Phillies games, Philadelphia Phillies, because
Mhm.
I was a baseball fan at the age of 10,
Yeah.
and we knew the names of the whole roster every year. And you could go to the Phillies game, and after the game, you could go down to the locker room, and as they came out, they would give you autographs, and I had autographs of everybody on the team. They would give you the time.
Mm.
Try to do that today.
No, no. You're getting tackled by some security guard.
you know.
Exactly.
Well,
You wouldn't
what
even get the pros.
when you say you're a baseball fan, when I was younger, I think I had thoughts of doing. It's like, oh man, if I could do, I was going to be a basketball player at one point, and I was like, well, I'm never, and my legs are too short, and that's not going to happen. Um, for me, it was my junior year in high school, and I was like, okay, this woman who's teaching me, Joan Wenzel, that seems like a rad job. She gets to talk about drums all day, and she gets to run a steel band. Like, I'm kind of amazed that someone is paying her money to do this. And for me, that was my junior year in high school. For you, what was something that when you were younger, you were like, oh man, I want to do this, but then something flipped, and you were like, music. Could you remember that time?
Yeah, yeah. It was all of the above. I mean, the access to these people and to the music at the age of probably not 10. It was a little later than that,
Hmm.
probably junior high school, given access, regular access to people who cared about you and who cared about the subject and who were passionate about it,
Hmm.
who are giving to people about steel drums uh, because that's what you got.
Hmm.
And so they were sharing their passion that they had acquired. And that speaks volumes. It's more than the subject matter. It's the passion
Yeah.
of the teacher.
Well, how was the conversation with your parents when you finally broached the subject with them that you're like, I think I'm going to do what Mickey Book's band does or what Mr. Abel does?
And
Uh,
I never broached the subject with them.
really?
No, I just did what I did.
And they were
Uh,
supportive?
Totally. They didn't even ask. This was another world.
Mm-hmm.
This is another cultural change. We'd had no helicopter moms, no helicopter parents. At the age of 10, I was probably riding a bicycle alone all over the city of Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That would never happen today.
No. I grew up in a very small town in Ohio that was not nearly had the intensity of Philadelphia, but I would leave at 7 in the morning, and my mom would say, "Come home when the street lights come on."
Yeah,
And
yeah,
she had
yeah.
no idea what I was doing for
No,
12 hours.
exactly. Yeah, and that sense of responsibility for
Mhm,
yourself
mhm.
at an early age, I think, is a really critical thing
Well,
because you got to sort it out.
yeah,
You got to what's valuable and what's not.
and as a percussionist, I have found a lot of like the DIY nature of being a kid and going out and figuring it out on your own. You're lost, and I don't know how to get back home. Well, I'll ask somebody for directions, and that'll get me to the next person that I can ask for directions, and eventually I get home. And sort of the rapport you have to build to sort of get through that stuff. As a percussionist, I find often you are still not to a lesser degree now, but you're still sort of like, come home when the lights are on. We got to deal with the flutes today, you know. And but I think it's helpful actually. I wish the flutes sometimes were like, come home when the lights are on. We got to deal with the percussionists today, and they had to figure it out on their own. Um, I'm curious if you have similar thoughts on that technology, Bill. I wish we should have just done this podcast writing letters back and forth to each other. And sorry about
You
that.
know, it's a great thing, but Ruth and I talk about this now regularly, that, the internet, which is a huge piece of cultural candy,
Mm,
now has a dark side. It is a vehicle for every and it is an enabler for every person in the world who wants to do harm at the expense of other people, who wants to benefit from harming other people in some way or other. It used to be only CEOs could do that with their corporations, but now anybody anywhere can do that. And this is a really different world, and I do not envy anyone born into it.
I am lucky enough to have been of a generation where um there was no internet. I hesitate to be like it was better in our day, but it was different. There were different things that you had to use your brain for. And when you wanted to go play with your buddies, I had to go knock on a door,
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
and be like, is Danny home? And sometimes Danny wouldn't be home, and then the disappointment. I had to go sell popcorn as a Boy Scout. And just like the idea, you're knocking on some stranger's door and be like, you want to buy this popcorn? And they're like, no. It just like learning humiliation and a rejection from age 7 just by having to sell popcorn as an Eagle Scout. Anyway, I again to go back to my question that you were trying to answer is like I do think that stuff has helped me a lot as a percussionist. Not rejection necessarily, but just the DIY, having to go knock on the door myself. I think has influenced percussion
No question.
for all of us.
No question.
Well,
So certainly true.
can you tell me? I want to. So this book, Unpopular Music, the precursor to your upcoming book, has a lot of great stories about Nexus and sort of your all's process. You also have just like this moment where you're talking about like what is the symphony orchestra, what is the ethos behind it, why is it problematic, why is it great, and you sort of like give your thoughts on all that stuff. But um, there's one story that I keep, for some reason, my Cajun approach to reading your book keeps flipping me back to is one where you guys had Nexus's history is based a lot on free improv, and your concerts often were entirely improvised until you started introducing pieces by George Hamilton Green and other things like that. But there was one improv that you planned, and it was a silent
Oh,
improv.
yeah.
And you and I talked with Russ a little bit about it. He started laughing, but you were like, we're gonna mime playing the instruments as if they're making sound. And like 13 seconds into walking on stage, you had bumped into a bell or you had hit the bell, and everybody turned and looked at you as like, "Dog, we talked about this." And I'm and we so hasn't had that exact experience. Improv isn't sort of foundational to our group's origins, but I've had moments where everybody turns and looks at me and like, "We talked about this, buddy. What are you doing?" And like, can you tell me just a little bit about like what was it? When did you join Nexus? What was it like being in a percussion? Because it's different than being in an orchestra, which you also have a lot of experience in. But like, what's it like being on the road with three or in your case five at times? Um, really interesting people and but who would also call in your book there's a lot of BS calling in your book, like people are always razzing each other and giving each other shit the whole time. Like, can you just tell me what that experience was like for you?
It was great. We were blessed. All of us felt blessed, and we were all committed to it no matter what. And we did it for the first 5 years with no remuneration of any kind, and it wasn't even a concern. Um, because we were all playing in orchestras or doing or teaching and had other income to take care of the bills. But then we had this experience together where we were able to satisfy each other's um, dreams for what can be done with these instruments, other than in addition to playing in an orchestra. So it was a blessing, and we all felt that, and we still do. And even though it's not happening anymore, we're too old. One of the things that happens with age is some things evaporate, like your technique,
Mm,
uh, and it's health more than anything else, and age, and you find ways to deal around it and to hide it when you become older,
yeah.
to get through it and make it work for you. But there comes a point where it's time to let go, and you have to know what that point is rather than trying to go beyond it.
Well, it's hard.
And
I mean, it's one of the and you don't have to speak as you feel appropriate on this issue, but I remember as a student, not a student, I hadn't been out of school, but um, Nexus has lost two members of its ensemble. If I'm in, I don't want to exclude Michael Crichton
right.
from the list of folks, but John Wire early on, and then Robin Engelman within the last. I'm not sure exactly how many years ago he passed, but I got to meet Robin and speak with him in his apartment in Toronto, and it was the most hilarious conversation. Like, he just had no filter, and I got to imagine being in a car with him for 12 hours at a pop. You all sort of were like equally horrified, but just doubled over laughing. Like, if
Yeah.
John and I never met John Wire, but I'm curious if you wouldn't mind sharing some of like if you could just have 10 minutes in a room with both of those guys, what would you say to them? What would you thank them for? What would you give them shit for? You know?
Uh, well, um, it's dicey. It's dicey because I don't want to go to some of the concerns I had, and we all had concerns about each other,
Hmm.
and it was pointless to go there because in the long run it didn't matter at all.
Yeah.
Um, we each had our own characteristics and our own personalities, and they were radically different. All five of us were really different individuals, but that was what basically was the glue that held us together. It showed us how to be uh, how to accept things that happen that were caused by other people, whether it's musical or otherwise,
Mhm.
and how to deal with it and learn from it. So I'll leave it at that.
Mm.
We that happened from the get go, from the very beginning, and it happened throughout the 50 years we were together, and it continues to happen for those of us who are still around.
Well, one of the things that I'm only 47, but I'm increasingly grateful for my three bandmates that we're now in our 25th year, but it's the 20th year that the four of us have been together. And there's no pill you can take that sort of gets you to the point of understanding why you're so grateful for those other folks. In my case, Eric, Jason, and Adam. And I'm trying real hard every time I leave a rehearsal to say I love you guys and just leave it at that. Um,
They know. They know. You know.
yeah, well, sometimes, but sometimes I don't take criticism so well in a rehearsal and it gets awkward and whatever. But
Oh man, we've had those kinds of moments. You cannot avoid those moments. If you're married, you have those moments, right?
right, right. Well,
Yeah.
one of the things
So
that's impressed me so much about Nexus is like I couldn't even before joining a group. It's like why didn't they break up when John Wire passed away? And then when Robin passed, I was like, oh my god, how are they? And they're still going. Like, w- w- how, Bill? Like now I'm 20 years in, and like how?
well, first of all, we had Gary, and he hit the ground running,
Mm,
and we accepted him, and we treated him just like he's treated us, which was the same way we treated John and Robin.
mm,
Essentially,
mhm,
you accept and you criticize and you listen to what they say back and you listen to what they do, and then you know whether you pursue it or not or back off.
mm,
And if you back off, you accept it and move on. You know.
mm,
So and Gary has been a fantastic addition to the ensemble.
mhm,
Uh, he's a truly unique individual because he has his business
mhm.
sense is really important. His people skills are mountainous,
Yeah.
um, and his technical skills are mountainous too. So, well, he just fit right in right away. Boom, here he is, and
One of
we've
my
got a great.
one of my favorite. The first time we played drumming with you all was in Ojai, and Steve was there. In the rehearsal, it wasn't like, okay, everybody, let's start rehearsing drumming from the beginning. Like Russ just walked up and started banging on the bongo, and then Bob joined him, and we were like, oh wow, let's watch Nexus play, or these guys play Steve Reich's drumming. And then the second movement started, and you know it just kept going. And I was like, oh, we're going. This rehearsal's happening. And Gary was playing the rock part or no, I was playing the rock part on the marimba movement in the transition. And there's a point at which Gary then needs to enter and join me before the piece can move on. Except Gary had fallen asleep on a bench outside, like, because it's beautiful Ojai. It's like, just lovely breeze. And he is just passed out. And no one would go wake him up. I just sat there going on marimba and I looked over and Russ is like, not my problem, bud. And like, and I just vamped for like 3 minutes until somebody kind of like lightly tapped Gary and he woke up and he's like, oh yeah, cool. And I, that way of that, it just felt like a band. And I think I hadn't realized that about you guys, including Steve Reich and musicians, like just the culture there. I think we always,
It's a family. It's a definitely a family. It's
yeah.
just like a you accept. You be honest with each other.
Hmm.
Invariably, you be honest with each other, whatever that entails. And if that leads you to a dark place, then you back off and accept.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard having the hard conversation every once in a while, it doesn't happen that often with but when it does happen, it's very uncomfortable, but you actually end up learning a lot more, mostly about yourself and
Totally.
what your bullshit is that you're
Absolutely.
bringing to the table. Um, and you learn to accept that too. Cause some things about
Totally.
yourself it's like, I'm a human. I have weaknesses. And one other thing before we leave your book, before your other book, not the one that's currently coming out, um, is I am just as somebody who carries gear through airports on a regular basis. At every other page, you're like, and then we came back from Okinawa, and there was a truckload of gongs that we had shipped back, and Ray Dillard had to drive them from blah 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 to blah blah blah, and then we went to Bali, and I bought an entire gamelan and had it shipped. I'm like, what? Can you tell me a little bit about? I mean, Steve Weiss didn't exist back in the Sweetwater.com was not a thing when you guys were percussionists. You couldn't just order a pair of maracas. Like, what was that vibe like for you all?
Well, it was basic and critical. Our instruments went with us for every tour. Our budget was 50% instrument shipping.
Wow.
Without that, we wouldn't have gone. We would not. We've never really gone anywhere and used only borrowed instruments. And a lot of our pieces were used. We used unique instruments
Mm.
that were only one of a kind in the world, probably. And if you want to play that piece, you got to have that instrument. But it was deeper than that. It was not only practical, but it was critical because we were creating sounds, and these were our selections of sounds, and that's what we presented to audiences.
Mm.
And that's what we were comfortable playing. Without those sounds, we wouldn't make music the same way because these were what we wanted to play that piece with. So the instruments had to travel with us. My one story that I tell, I don't know if I told it in the book, but when we first got together for the first 5 years, and if we had a tour somewhere in Canada, we'd show up at the airport with maybe each of us having 2 foot lockers full of instruments that we could carry with us and do a concert.
Mhm.
So these were not xylophones and marimbas or chimes or timpani,
Mhm.
but these were instruments that we selected for the pieces we were going to play, and we took them with us. We would show up at the Toronto airport with each of us, and when there were 6 of us, we'd have 12 foot lockers. All of that would travel as excess baggage without extra charge.
Mm.
That's inconceivable today.
No, definitely not.
But you
Delta
would pay
doesn't
a
operate
small
that.
fortune to move even those 12 foot lockers around the world. We carried our own marimbas around the world, even though we could have easily rented them, which in Japan, I have to say, we did a couple of times with marimbas and xylophones because we knew the quality would be high,
Mhm.
and we knew the people who were providing them would provide instruments that were what we wanted. And the same thing happened with some of the latter European tours, but before that, we carried everything with us. Vibraphones were typically we would still take that with us.
Wow.
And for the very reason that we started this conversation with, it was the sound that we knew and trusted and that we wanted to make our music with.
Mm. You know, the other thing I'm
So,
gleaning
yeah,
about you from this book is that, you know, everybody, and I find this to be true a little bit with So too, and I imagine with Sandbox and Third Coast and a bunch of other ensembles, is that um, there are different roles that you take in the organization outside of what you do on stage. When you're on stage, yes, I have my own sound, Adam has his own sound, et cetera, et cetera. But when we're off stage, there's like, I'm the guy that like wraps all the cables. I love writing personal checks. I deal with like cash flow. There's little things I do that I oddly take
Santa
pride.
Claus.
Yeah, I take pride in. And with you, you strike me as somebody who has been thoughtfully archiving every moment that you had the chance to do from the beginning. And that even down to there was a book, and I believe Robin gave it to me, or maybe it was you, of all the sayings, like little quips that had come up
Yeah.
amongst the ensemble. And I still have a copy. I look at it every once in a while just because I'm really grateful. And so maybe I'm misidentifying, misdiagnosing what your role was, but if it is accurate, I'm very grateful that you are someone who did that sort of stuff.
I'm a historian. I wrote a history of Nexus, several histories of Nexus,
Hmm.
and several histories of the Rochester Philharmonic Orchestra too.
Hmm.
Um, and every ensemble I've been involved with in some way, I wish I'd kept more because I could, if I had done more with the Rochester Orchestra, there were so many rehearsals when if I just jotted that comment down
Mm.
and I'd have a book.
Yeah.
Because they were hilarious and profound and you name it, and worthy of contemplation and thinking about. And but they're gone, so you
Well,
can't do everything.
what were some of the what were the roles that other folks in the ensemble played? Like if you were the guy that was like really interested in the history of things, what was Gary? What was Russ? What was Bob? What were their passions and what did you see them that only they could do that you couldn't do?
Well, Gary has a really deep technical base.
Hmm.
He could provide, and his personality, in contrast to Robin's personality, for example, he was able to interact with people who were very much in their own zeitgeist.
Mm.
Gary just accepts it and rolls with it, and Robin would have some difficulty in dealing with some. that kind of thing, and that happens all the time to everybody.
Right. Totally.
And you have to deal with it. Um, um, Bob took on the role of instrument transport.
Mm.
When we were shipping instruments around the world, he would arrange all of the carnets that had to be provided for customs and immigration, and I would, or sometimes he would do the truck rental. A lot of times I would, for 10 years, I managed the group, so I was doing all of the
Mm.
contracting and dealing with the other members of the ensemble of Nexus during contract negotiations and discussions was really a challenge,
Mhm.
but we got through it,
And what
and
about
we dealt.
Russ? Was he just the baby face boy of the group?
Robin?
Russ.
Russell. Uh, Russell was what we always called him the rock of the group.
Oh.
He never missed anything. He was always right there on top of playing
Mhm.
and held us together when the rest of us spaced out. And he was just a rock, and he still is, and he always will be.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's
he's
been
just a
my
rock.
that's
So
been
he
my
was the rock.
experience of working with Russell too. Like he won't say it unless it needs to be said, but when he says
Exactly.
it, you better be listening because he's right.
Very, very efficient with words.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned Robin. The first time So met Robin. I think maybe it was first time I met Robin was we were at I think uh, wherever he was teaching at the time, and we gave him our recording of drumming, and he just pushed our hand away. He's just like, "Get that out of my face! I don't want to hear that piece." And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "I hate that piece. The best piece of music that Steve ever wrote was Music for Pieces of Wood." And I was just like recoiling in fear, like, I can't believe, like, heresy, but I also am like, I just love, every once in a while I love having people in my life who you're not wondering what they're thinking. And and in that moment I was just actually, now at 47, I'm really grateful that Robin said that thing, because then it meant more when I saw him. One of the most important performances I've ever seen, live performances, was him doing 433 at PASIC. And it was right before he was about to leave the group, because he had some eyesight problems, and he just he put on his bass drum. His history of rudimental snare drumming and old school drumming like that, and he just stood there quietly, and then in between movements would put down the bass drum. Him and Morris Palter, I believe.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking, like, okay, this piece can hit in a way that Mahler 2 does,
Oh yeah. Well, any
when it's done with the context. And maybe I was the only one in the room that knew that context. I don't know, and I don't really care. I just remember watching Robin in that moment and being like, damn, that was crazy. you know?
Yeah, Robin could play crazy too, man. He could just inspire you up the tree, man. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that kept us together for so many years, and we all did that to each other
Yeah. Well,
at
what
various
was
times.
at 82, or not 82, at approaching 80, and at 47, one of the things that I'm learning about myself is that there's weaknesses I have that I
Mhm.
care about and worry about. There's weaknesses I have that I don't care and worry about anymore. And I'm much more confident about the things that I'm strong at, and I'm much more okay putting that out as not a crutch, but this is a pole vault that I'm going to use to jump 30 feet in the air. For you, what are the like? Let's start with the strengths, and then we'll get to the weaknesses, or the weaknesses, and then we'll get to the strengths. What are some things that you are still worried about, and then what are some weaknesses that you just don't care about anymore?
I don't care. Well, one by one, the weaknesses that you care about evaporate.
Uh-huh.
They become weaknesses that you don't care about or don't use and avoid. One of the things that's really important is for you to know yourself and to be honest with yourself, and that's a learning experience.
Yeah.
And that's a win-win for you and for everybody else. If you recognize and are able to recognize really and see yourself through the eyes of others, that's really helpful.
Mm, mm,
And trust that and not fight it. And that's something that you learn. It starts around 50,
yeah.
around the age of 50, and then one by one, the things keep saying, well, really in the real world, that's really not so important.
Hmm.
Now I gotta let go of that, and you get over it. And, until just about everything is that way.
Is
You
there
simply
anything?
accept what's out there because let's face it, in 100 years, it's not gonna make any difference to anybody.
Yeah.
It only makes a difference to you now, and so why worry about it?
Is there
Uh,
anything still
Accept
today
it.
that when you wake up to, like, play music or think about music that you're still a little insecure about?
I don't play it anymore. One thing the one thing I'm totally secure about is improvising. I can improvise with anybody at any time who wants to do that, and that's what I love about it.
Mm,
I mean, I've improvised with grade schoolers.
mm,
I've improvised with symphony orchestra musicians who thought I was crazy for asking them to improvise and who walked away
mm,
uh, howling with satisfaction. Unbelievable. I can do that anywhere, and I love doing that. I love letting the audiences know that we're improvising.
mm,
We don't know what we're doing. We're exploring, and if you guys pay attention out there, you can explore too.
mm,
Uh, Try to figure out what's going on because that's what we're doing. Um, so, and the rest of the stuff, symphony orchestra playing is highly technical.
mhm,
And you have to be on top of your game every morning, or you're likely to be let go.
mhm,
And because not only do you notice it, because everybody else notices it in the audience and in the orchestra.
right,
So you got to be at the top of your game no matter what comes up, and you've got to be able to deal with what you're getting, and that becomes really a monkey on your back over time.
mm,
If you love the music enough, and I always loved it until the last day, you
mm.
deal with it and you find a way to make it work. But it's there, and eventually, you may get to a point, which I did get to a point where I've been here, I've done this, and there's other stuff I want to try while I still got breath.
Yeah.
That occurs to you.
What is something, what are you most grateful for? I wanna be respectful of your time here and only keep I have just a couple more questions, and then I'll let you off the hook. What is the thing that having done, toured the world, gotten to work with great composers, gotten, John Cage, there's folks that you've met and worked with that I just have I can only read about, and John Cage and, Toru Takamitsu and many others. What is the thing that, like, you are the most grateful for having gotten to do that? What's the thing that you would be a completely different person if you hadn't have done this?
Well, the highlight of my life, of many highlights, but many highlights. But if I had to pick one, it would be the premiere performance of the Takamitsu For Me Flows What You Call Time at Carnegie Hall with the Boston Symphony Orchestra, and then doing 100 more performances of that piece over the next 10, 20 years. We had been trying to get Toru to write a piece for us. He was a friend that we had all had personal relationships with for a long time by the time that premiere occurred.
Mhm,
But after performing it at Carnegie Hall twice and then the Kennedy Center twice, we performed it in Japan,
mhm,
did a premiere there, and then a European premiere in what 1991, I think it was.
mhm.
And so that was a real highlight, and that was good all the way around from top to bottom. Every experience with that was fantastic and opened a lot of other doors for us.
What is it about that particular piece in collaboration that you think set it apart from, say, working
Well,
with Gavin Bryars or something? Like, no knock on Gavin Bryars, but what was the thing that set that apart?
composed for us and was composed for instruments that we knew, and most of us were had lots of experiences with orchestras, so we could very confidently go into the Boston Symphony and know what the orchestra is expected, know what that was all about, that whole scene, and take advantage of that knowledge and present a piece with that's essentially what I would call a concerto grosso. There are 2 orchestras in that piece. There's a percussion orchestra and a symphony orchestra, and they each have their moments, and every instrument in the percussion section has its moment in the music.
Yeah.
And we selected all the instruments that Toro came to Toronto for us when it was being composed, and we each selected our instruments and our sounds, and to play to take advantage of that and put it into a performance like Carnegie Hall, Bison or Centennial of Carnegie Hall. That was just unbelievably wonderful.
I try my hardest not to hold grudges, but I still have one grudge that I would love. If I'm in the room with Bob Van Cise again, I would be like, You program For Me Flows What You Call Time the year after I leave? I play steel, like, I grew up playing steel drums since I was in, like, ninth grade. Like, really? Really? And I'm curious, like, did Bob play steel drums a lot when he was?
Bob had never played steel drums, and we got the music. Will tell you the story. We got it only a month and a half before the premiere.
Yeah, that's more common than
So
people.
he had to learn that part, and that's the steel drums are the easiest thing, perhaps, because the vibraphone and crotales have to work together,
Mhm.
and you got to be right on the ball. If you take a second and hesitating to pick up a stick, you're not going to be able to play the part.
Yeah.
I've got that all together, so it's a pretty incredible challenge. There's a really good performance of that piece, by the way, by the Berlin Philharmonic, that's available. You can actually buy it online, for, uh for a membership, subscription to the Berlin Philharmonic season. You can actually buy their performance of it with
With
their percussion section,
Oh,
and
not
it's
with you guys. It's
they
not with
really
it's not with Nexus, it's with the
no,
Berlin percussion.
oh, their own percussion section with a conductor that we have worked with before that, so he knew the piece. We worked with him in Japan, and, but it unfortunately, we don't have any videos. We have a lot of audio recordings of performances that we've done, but no videos. But the Berlin House of Philharmonic has a really good video done by the German engineers, technical engineers. Fantastic.
Yeah, I was thinking back, I found my graduate recital CD. It's not even, like, online and there's no video of it, and I think every kid now that goes through school, like, it's like there is visual and audio documentation of everything you've done, and for me, like, I had to find a CD player because I didn't own one, and I listened to it, and I thought to myself, like, "Alright, Josh, you weren't too bad in 2006. It's been downhill since then, but, you were pretty on top of things in 2006."
Oh, I have a quick story in that regard. Teaching in Japan, a kid came into one of my lessons at the school, and he played a really neat piece. And I didn't know the piece, and I said, "That was really fantastic. Where did you get it?" He said, "Well, 2 weeks ago, I went online. I heard a recital at Oslo, Norway,
Mhm.
and so I saw the title of the piece, and I downloaded the title and Googled it and found out who the publisher was. I bought it, and in the next 2 days, I had the parts, and I started working on it, and here I am, in Tokyo, and I'm playing it for you now." I mean, something like that would have taken 5 years
Yeah.
when I was a student in school.
Yeah, I mean, I wanna be clear, technology, like you said earlier, technology is a tool, and there are many people who use it for ill wills, but then if you can harness it and exploit it for what it can do well, then the dissemination of music, the awareness of just what's going
Uh,
on, uh
but, the big lesson for me, Josh, was that, there are 2 sides to the coin.
Mhm,
Every human endeavor has an equal and opposite side,
mhm,
everyone,
yeah,
and we are enamored of the good sides of the candy. We're enamored of it at first, and then the health issues start to arise
yeah.
and
You
become aware of the dark side.
Yeah, you eat too much candy, you get sick, you know?
You get sick.
Well, I
And
have 2
can
more 2 more quick questions for you, Bill, and then
Yeah,
I'll let you go.
go ahead.
If you could go back to, see, yourself when you were in college and just you had 30 seconds to grab him by the shirt collar and be like, "Dude, trust me on this thing. You need to, like, stick with this, or this is the truth. Gotta go." Like, what would you say to your 20-year-old self?
I would say exactly what I say to myself every day, still do. Do I really wanna do this?
Mm,
Yeah, why do I really wanna do this? Well, I love the music. Somebody would even pay me if I can do this enough
mhm.
well, and I'd be able to do this every day for 50 years. I would have said, "You're crazy. This is never gonna happen," but, uh, don't question yourself, just do it.
Yeah. Well, so you would
I
grab
wanna
yourself
do
and
today. I
you would
wanna get
grab
this
Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, what do I wanna do today? And every orchestra rehearsal, I ask myself that question, "Do I really wanna be here?" Yeah, of course I do wanna be here. I do wanna be here because, I love this stuff. That's a great thing to and, you can't make that happen. It either happens or it doesn't. And if it happens, you're blessed, and if it doesn't, you're not blessed. You gotta find something else that makes you blessed, you know?
Well, it sounds like your 20-year-old self thought it was crazy that you would do this for the next 50 years, but your 80-year-old self
Totally
would go
crazy.
and grab him and say, "You are crazy. Go lean into it. It's worth it."
I advise students that all the time. It comes into my lesson at Eastman and says, well, I ask him the first day, freshman comes in, what do you want to do? Well, I want to be a percussion soloist. Are you crazy? You know what's involved? And the answer usually is yes. And I say, well, if that's your answer now, I'm going to do everything I can to help you try to make that happen. And I'll ask you when you're a senior if you still feel that way. And if you still feel that way when you're a senior, you're not going to have any better advocate for your activities than you have right here in me,
Yeah.
you know? So that's really critical to question yourself, know your values.
Yeah, I think as a teacher, I've often found, there's some students who say things like, I want to play in an orchestra, and I immediately have a pang of insecurity because that's not a strong suit of mine. But what I can do, what I think I'm really good at, is being like, I will help you be as confident at that as I am at this. I can show you confidence is sort of a universal thing. It applies to, I weed whack in the same way that I play on stage with like, just, I'm going to go. And if I mess it up, no one's going to die, and
Fantastic.
as a teacher, I have learned that about myself that everybody, like, there are people who wake up every day and just love raking leaves, and that they're as passionate at that as I am about talking to Steve Reich and as you are about talking to Takamitsu and all, and archiving the stuff that your journeys and my final question. But Bill, I have really enjoyed this, and I'm sorry to rob you of an hour and 12 minutes of your life, but I am very, very grateful to you. My final question is: Do you
Gosh, anytime.
do you happen to have any book recommendations that people could check out moving forward? Did you happen to write a new one, or is there something that you could suggest people pick up and read that might just be coming out in the near future?
Hmm. I have to think about that. It's like, what's your favorite instrument? Every book has something to help you to grow, and your challenge as a reader is to find that because every book has it. That's what I would say.
Bill, I'm
I can't.
giving you a softball. The new book that you just wrote.
Yeah.
Come on, hold it up. Let the people
Well,
see it.
I wrote it primarily for myself
Okay.
to get that stuff out off my mind and to get it out there and not have to think about it too much anymore. Although there's a ton of stuff in there that reading the book again would cause me to question and want to argue with,
Huh.
So,
Well, can you hold the book up just so folks can see
oh
it
yeah,
again
sure.
and let
Yeah.
people know the
Called
title?
Concepts of Sound, Percussion Instruments in Western Classical Music. It's a fascinating subject. It's worthy of a lifetime of study,
And
and it talks about things that you're not likely to have ever talked about in a private lesson or have read about in an instruction book of any kind.
I can't wait to read it myself. And Bill, I'll send you my address, and when I get it, I will sit down for a week straight and just read it out loud and send you the recording of it that you can use as you see fit.
Gosh, you don't have to do anything. I've got your email address. So probably tonight sometime you'll get an email, and then you'll get an email from WeTransfer because it's a large file,
Okay.
and then you download it from WeTransfer.
Amazing, amazing, Bill. Your generosity on many fronts has no bounds, and I'm can't wait to see you in person next time, whenever that is. And in the meantime, please stay safe.
Likewise.
And
I admire what Silk Percussion is doing. I really admire your concert in Rochester was fantastic. I love the piece. I love the concept and I love the realization of that piece that you guys put together.
thank you.
So well deserved.
It's an honor to get to play for you and with you anytime it happens. And next time I see you, we can have a nice glass of wine and cheers and talk about other exploits that we've experienced
And shared, I'm sure.
yes.
Okay, Josh.
Bill, thank you
Beautiful.
so much.
You're so nice to have asked me to do this because it's
It's
fun.
absolutely my honor, and I'm very grateful. So, Bill, take care of yourself. Tell your wife I said hello, and we'll hopefully talk to you sooner than later.
Be well, man. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Bill. Bye.
All right, everybody, thanks for listening. I apologize in the spirit of concert honesty. I would like to be honest that I had some audio issues on my end. We got them remedied about halfway through, so I'm sorry if you felt things were a little echoey there early on, but we powered through, and I still do not regret a second of that conversation. So I hope you feel that same way. All right, hope you're well. Hope everything is good in your life, and I hope that you're having conversations too. It's kind of one of the biggest joys of my life to date. So we'll see you next time. Next up on the pod is Joan Tower, and then followed by Bobby Previtt. Talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.